Welcome to the Work in Progress podcast. This is a space where we want to create conversations around things that actually matter. Thanks for joining us today. We hope these words encourage you to know that no matter where we are in our journeys, we're all still a work in progress.
Yes, sir. You know what that sound means?
Yeah, that's a very nostalgic sound right there.
It's graduation season. We are graduating. We made it.
Congrats, bro. You did it.
I did it. I got my diploma and I got my college degree. I made it.
Master Daniel.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Daniel. This is Aaron, and we are back for another episode of Work in Progress podcast. If you didn't get by the intro song, we're talking graduation today, and not to be confused with Kanye graduation. We're not talking about Kanye West.
Nope.
We're talking about what do I do after I graduate? If you look at the calendar, we are right smack dab in the middle of graduation season. And so we thought, hey, let's just sit and talk about things that we wish we would have known or things that we would do different after we graduated. So.
Yeah. Dude, this reminds me so much of obviously my graduation. I have my tassel hanging in my truck. It's been hanging in my truck since
what a child.
May of 2019. It is red and black, and it is from Texas Tech University.
Boo.
Recum. And I'm actually about to go get it, dude. I'm gonna start wearing that around as a memoriam.
Boo.
Dude, come on, man. Texas Tech was a great school.
Boo.
But
what was go back to high school. What was your high school graduation song?
don't remember.
Boo.
I don't remember the song I listened to on the way up here, bro.
Getting all the boos, man.
Boo, what was yours, dude?
Jay-Z, Forever Young. I remember walking out, graduation, Jay-Z rapping over the top. It's one of those memories that I'll have forever. In college, it was just pomp and circumstance. They're not nearly as fun as high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, but the college one is better.
UHB definitely wouldn't have allowed Jay-Z. I'll tell you that much right now.
That's true. I can't believe your high school did. I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
It was clean, so it was fine. It was cool.
Oh, yeah, dude. Jay-Z is good. I think on this topic brings back a lot of awesome memories and a lot of honestly not as good of memories too, because that was a weird time in life. You basically just finished with what you knew to be life for the last 4 years of college, however many years of high school. There's really no gap in that, right? Other than your summer breaks. And so from kindergarten, all the way up to college, 20 plus years of your life is dedicated towards
a long time
study, towards going to school, towards this routine that you develop. You slightly changes when you get to college, and then you adapt for 4 more years or more if you're a master like you are. And that's a long time, man. And then all of a sudden, everything is just like, phew.
Yeah, I think, So we're going to talk about like post college graduation. But if you're graduating high school right now in this season, I think this is something that you can also get something from. Literally, when we talked about, hey, we're going to do a graduation podcast, just typed in on Google, what do I do now that I graduated college? 1.23 billion results popped up. And literally, like, I'm scrolling through this first thing, and it's like 10 things to do after you graduated college. Now what? 16 options to consider. So you graduated college. Now what? What to do after college? 12 things to do after graduate. Like, I mean, there's so much stuff. So I think it's important. Like, what do I do now that I graduated college? So basically what we're going to do today is we're going to, I think each have 3 things that if we could go back and tell ourselves at 21 or 22, whenever you graduated college, hey, do this over the next couple years. Don't do this. And so maybe you learn from our mistakes. Maybe you pick up something if that's you in the season, or maybe you're recently graduated, like maybe a year ago, and you're still asking this question, what do I do now that I graduated? So hopefully today's podcast helps you out a little bit.
Yeah, man. And let me preface, like, I'm a firm believer, that like God puts everything in our paths, in our lives for a reason. And so by no means is this us like regretting anything.
No.
This is more of like if things were different for me, then if I knew what I knew now back then, this is how I would have done it, because like if things were different for me, then I might not have met my wife. So like, I'm perfectly glad the way things happened the way they did. But for those of you who haven't yet had these things happen or are going through this period of time that we are referencing, they might be beneficial for you to jump over some of these roadblocks or these hurdles that have been in the way. And so
let's just dive in.
You go first.
All right. So the first one,
Boom.
I had more than 3 because I'm older than you and I've lived more life.
You
post graduating college.
Yeah.
But I thought the first one that I had, and these aren't really, I'm not an alliteration guy, so these aren't going to rhyme. They're not going to have the same.
Hey, no problem,
we're
dude.
going in.
Cool with that.
First one is, you'll grow where you go, right? And so what I mean by that is,
But you're a rhyme guy, huh?
what I mean by that is like you're going to grow in ways after you graduated, but you're only going to grow in the areas that you feed, right? And so, and of course, like we're a spiritual podcast, and so I'm thinking about it through a spiritual lens, but also like just in an adulting lens, like, right? You want to learn how to cook and take care of yourself in the kitchen, right? You're not just going to magically wake up one day and start doing that. No, you're going to grow in that area by actually being intentional and like putting in the work to do that, right? But in a spiritual way, like I think of this passage in Jeremiah. I didn't put down the note. Jeremiah 17, I think. And it's talking about this tree that is planted by water, and the roots grow really deep, and you can't really tell at first. It just looks like any other tree, but you come back over the years and you look back at this tree and it's growing and it's like fruitful because it's getting down deep. Those roots are getting really deep. And so I think if I could tell myself something at age 22 is you want to be a successful husband, father, employee, like you got to start investing now at 22. And so you grow where you go. So again, looking at it through the spiritual lens, man, if I want to grow spiritually, I have to actually take time and invest in that. I'm not just going to wake up one morning and go from drinking spiritual milk to eating spiritual steak by doing nothing. Like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's the first one. You grow where you go. Feed what you want to grow. Your turn.
All right.
Take your first one.
I didn't know if we were going back and forth or we were doing all 3.
Take your first one.
All right, man. So I'm doing mine in no specific order, but so one of the things that I was lacking in college, and obviously based off of what you just said, that stayed with me because that's what I was going in that direction. So that's what grew, was the lack of community, a lack of people in my life. Obviously not family. I think family is always there for you and is a good support system. But when you graduate college and you start your own life, there is a distance between you and your family if you don't live with them. And obviously if you live in a different town, a different city, different state, then they're not physically with you. So you can't be with them all the time. Only, phone calls and text messages only do so much. But finding a physical community, and preferably one that's gospel-centered around the body of Christ, and like that was lacking for me. And so I never tried to find it, and I knew it was there. I knew there was churches around my area, but I never made the intentional decision to go and invest in that. And I think that hurt me in the long run, because what you find out happens is that you end up getting in these routines of aloneness, and obviously one of the enemy's biggest tools and tactics is to get you alone, right? And so then you're susceptible to more things, and it's just not good, right? So it was me and my best friend, and we were just by ourselves majority of the time. We would go home, then we go to work, then we come back home, then we just play video games all day. And so it was fun at first because it's like, whoa, this is real life. This is crazy. And then it gets old after a while. A couple of months go by and you're like, dude, this is so boring. And then what else do I do? I don't know anybody. Like, am I going to go home for a weekend just to hang out with my mom and my dad and my brother? Like, that's cool for like the holidays, but on a regular weekend in, September, I'm not going to go home and just to hang out. So I think finding a community that is centered around Jesus and intentionally going out and seeking that was the thing that I was lacking. And so if I could recommend something, that's probably what I would recommend first and foremost, just so you aren't alone, especially for those going out of state or out of the town that you're from or the college town that you're from. And I think that actually plays a part in your first one, is like growing those roots with people.
Well, that and too, like in community, like when you're in high school or you're in college, like you're almost forced to be in community. Like I can think of like welcome week, like the first year freshman, you show up to your new college, right? And what do? They throw you into these welcome week, whatever they call it. And they're forcing you to make friends. Like they're forcing you to be in community because they want you to stay there all 4 years and pay that tuition, I'm sure. But because they know that like you're not meant to be alone. Well, you graduate and then you go get a job and like work. They don't do that. Like they're not putting you in these little groups to make friends. And so you have to be, as an adult, like after you graduate, you have to be intentional with finding community because you still need it. Like human beings are meant to be in community. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the toughest things. I was only out of college a year before I got married. And so that kind of helped. But even like in those first year and a half, 2 years of me being out of college, it was like, I know I need to be in community, but it's like, you have to be intentional with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is uncomfortable.
It's super weird.
Definitely need it.
I won't lie. Yeah, it's one of the harder things to do, right? Whenever you're like I want to play it cool. I don't want to be like, hey, I desperately need friends. I desperately need people. But also at the same time, it's like that effort is required, not only on their part, but on your part to like show that you are intentional and you want this and you want to grow these relationships and grow those roots. And I think that's probably one of the scariest parts, but it's also one of the most rewarding and fruitful if you really dive into it.
Yeah, that's good. My second one is seasons change. This every one was year, one bro. Every year seasons change. I think this is one that like when I first got out of college, I just expected the first job to be like the job. Yeah. I expected, the first paycheck to be the paycheck, like the first like apartment that you move into or house move into to be like the place, even the first city you move to be like that's it. Like I'm going to die here. Like this, I'm going to live my whole life and die here. But seasons change. And I think like looking back now, thinking that was 6, 7 apartments / houses ago. Woo. That's 3 different cities ago. Boy. Yeah, I mean it's wasn't married, now married. Wasn't a dad, now a dad. Like those are things that change. Like seasons change. But like you read in Scripture, Genesis 8, like God intended seasons to change. And so like even if you're in this season of like being alone or hating where you work or, not in a really good place, seasons change. Like you just have to hang on and hold on. Again, that kind of lends to being in community. But in the same way, like if life feels perfect, seasons change. And so you have to be aware and be ready for that to happen. And so I just think it's just a good reminder that like, I always think like when I'm talking to our high school students and even our middle school students here at the church, it's like they think everything is so like finite, like, right? They think
permanent.
What's happening here on Friday night, like that's going to be forever. Like the person I date as a freshman in high school, like that's going to be who I marry. Sometimes it happens, usually doesn't. Yeah. Right. But I have to think we need to be reminded as like young adults in our 20s, right? In our early 30s, like it's not forever. Seasons still change just like it did in high school. Yeah. And so don't just get stuck in your ways of like, this is how it's always going to be, because it's not going to be that way forever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the harder ones too, I think, because you don't when you're young, time goes by so slow, right? I remember like growing up, high school, college, it was just the slowest thing ever. I'm like, when is this going to end? When am I going to be an adult? And then the next thing you know, like you're an adult.
And you start getting bills and you're like, no, please. I know, right? Yeah. Take me back.
You start getting bills. You've been, married for a year already. You got your first kid. It's like, where did the time go? Yep. And so that's so interesting, man. I think that's really good. So my second one would be community again. No, I'm just kidding. But my second one would be probably not using the Bible as an inspirational quote book, like not using the Bible as something just to get inspirational quotes from. I read this devotional and I had it throughout all my high school and all my college, and it actually did me a lot of good. And I'm really thankful I had it, right? And it basically, what it was like, it would give you a verse of scripture and then like a very small, brief thought at the very end. And I'm like, okay, well, that's awesome. I'm getting my scripture, I'm reading the Bible almost every day. This is great. But like I never fully dove in, and I never read the Bible. I didn't consider the Bible like a book, or a series of books within a book. until like a couple years ago as an adult. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's like storylines here. There's context, there's history. It's rich, it's good. And it's important because it's like a roadmap. It's a blueprint to how to live your life. Right. And so, that was something that I wish I knew back then, because I know it now and it's drastically changed my life. I use the Bible, I study it. Obviously I'm not like a professional, I'm not good at it, but like opening that up and seeing it as that roadmap and that blueprint, like people before me have used since Jesus, it's just incredible. And it's the biggest resource you could ever go to.
Yeah.
If you're lost, right? Like if you're lost, if you're not lost, if you're having a good day, if you're having a bad day, it's the best resource you can go to no matter what. So
yeah,
memorize it, equip yourself with the truth. One of the most recent verses I've memorized, and when I say the most recent, I mean it's the only other one I've memorized besides John 3:16. And gosh. It's Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path.
Nice.
And that sticks with me because it's like, it's so true, man. Like that will light your path and hopefully light other people's paths in the process. And so don't forget that. It's a book. There's a lot of good information, rich story, and like the gospel. So like what more could you want,
Dude, you definitely know more than 2 scriptures for sure. You just may not know where they're found. You definitely know more than that.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I think the cool thing about like that is, like the more you, not the more you know, but the more like you spend time and like you actually learn like context and like storylines and all that. Yeah. It actually is better than just like going to Google and picking out a verse of the day and just like using it, because you're probably using it out of context. Mm-hmm. But also like it just means more when you know the full story. It's like when you go see a movie that's from a book and you've never read the book before. Like the movie may be great, but so oftentimes the book is still that much better.
Dude, that's great, man. That was really good.
And so this came to me off the top of my dome, man. And so like it's the same thing with like the Bible. Like if you're just pulling out these little like samples of the Bible, like it could be good and it could be what you need in that moment. But it's just so much better to get the full story.
Yeah, I agree. And dude, let me add on to that. It's so funny because like I think you're right whenever you say I know more than what I give myself credit for. And like the book of Acts, I just got done reading through that, and it was a combination of reading and listening. And then I heard a podcast, and the guy was like, "Yeah, the Acts of the Apostles." And then all of a sudden it clicked. I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, of course, that's what that means," because that's literally what the whole book is about, right? Yep. And then you see these amazing things that they've done by sharing the gospel and Jesus's like story and their witness, and then it all makes sense. And then you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so legit." And so now when I reference Acts, it's from a different perspective on my end, referencing it too. It's not just that I know one line of like, chapter 4. It's like I know the whole context of the whole book, and then I'm like, oh, I can directly pick which would apply best to this person in this situation. Yeah. And so it's super cool.
That's actually, next week we'll do a podcast on reading the Bible.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Boom. It's going to happen.
Let's go.
So if you're like listening to this now and you're like, I don't even know where to start, be sure you come back next week. All right. So my third one, my third one has to be that I would have listened to the Work in Progress pod. No, I'm just kidding. You should definitely listen to the podcast because it's something that comes from a place where we don't know everything. And that's actually my third one. Yeah. Is you don't know all that you think you do. Like, right. When you graduate college, like you're on this like emotional high because you're like, oh, I'm like that. I know everything in my field. Like I just finished 4 years of learning everything there is to know about business or exercise science or whatever.
You're the main character, right?
Yeah. And like, I know it all. Or like, worse, you go and you get more than a 4-year degree and you're like, I'm now a master of this. And you're not like, right there. You don't know everything. And I think that's important to remember, to approach life humbly. All right. God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Like, I think that's something that if I look back at myself at 22, well, before 22, post 22, I would remind myself often, you need to be humble. You don't know all that you think you do. Because when you get to that place where you think you know it all, that's usually where you get slapped in the face with life. And you're like, I didn't know that at all. Yeah. And so I think that actually lends toward getting into community and finding people who are older than you to speak into your life, because there's people who have already walked down the same path you're going in, that can say, chill out, bro. Like, that's not a good idea. I think of like, in my previous professional life, I was a teacher. And so like year one as a teacher, you think you know everything coming out of school because you were placed in, you student taught in a perfect classroom. You took a test that was in a perfect world. And then you get into a school who usually you get hired at a place, first year teacher, you kind of get thrown to the wolves, and you're like, oh, I'm sitting in my classroom day one. I'm like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. Right. But then you have mentor teachers, and you have these people that come alongside you, and anybody professionally could look back from day one to look back to even a year later, 2 years later, 10 years later. And they're like, oh man, I knew nothing compared to what I know now. And so I think that would just kind of wrap up my 20s. Now that I'm in my 30s, I would look back at my 20s and be like, bro, you didn't know anything. You should listen to people. And I'm sure when I turn 40 and I look back at my 30s, I'll say the same thing. You didn't know anything. And so I think just as a 22-year-old, as a graduate from college, I think I would remind myself to be humble. Accept people's like guidance and wisdom, and learn from people who have made the same mistakes or have walked the same path that you're walking. Because there's knowledge in that. There's just really good truth in relying on or learning from people's mistakes and successes. So
yeah, absolutely.
I tell little young Daniel that.
You mean Raph?
No, I'll tell young Daniel that.
Oh, I got you.
Back when I'm 22. So
I got you, bro. Yeah, that's good, man. I think that kind of like, it's funny because like we plan these podcasts out a little bit, right? But like we want them to be as authentic as possible, and so we give the points that would give us the best springboard for conversation, the best springboard for talking, but we don't script all this out. But a lot of what you said is like they piggyback with mine and mine piggyback with yours. And I think that kind of just shows like how similar we are. Like not just me and Daniel, but like everybody. I'm sure a lot of people have these similar experiences and would say the same thing. And so my last point would be like, there are authentic people living an authentic faith around you. You just got to go find them. And what I mean by that is, like as a young person, like having a discipleship relationship or like a mentor is so crucial. And I didn't know that until recently. And it genuinely has changed my life. It's transformed my heart, my mind, and my soul. And not me like trying to be like, what does Paul say? He says, follow me, follow Christ.
Imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like one of those things, right? Where you find somebody who is living a truly faithful and authentic life. And that is like just a good image of how you can live to look more like Jesus, right? So we're not trying to imitate these people to be them. We're trying to get closer to Jesus, to look more like Jesus each and every day. Yeah. And there are people like that where you're from. You just have to find them, right? And I don't think it requires a mad like search and like Google search. I don't think you're ever going to find them that way. I think that involves getting plugged in and asking questions to those who are in leadership positions, volunteer positions, and within the church context. And I think that was a huge thing. And being involved in the community that I'm in now, that didn't start for me until like 2-3 years into it. And so I just can't imagine what it would look like for me if I started it immediately. Obviously, you have to cultivate and grow the relationships in order to trust somebody enough for that. But the sooner you can start that, the better you can take that wisdom and that knowledge from people who have already walked in your shoes and then start applying it to your life as quickly as you can, so that you don't make those same mistakes or worse, something worse. And so, dude, those are good. Those are solid, man. Like I would pay to have this advice.
I'll drop my Venmo in the comment. I'm just kidding. Okay. Man, I think that's, I just think that's kind of the space that as you graduate from college, like it's a great time. Like college is great. Adulthood is great. Like it's a really great time, but I think you have to remember that you don't know everything, and to think like, man, I didn't know anything when I walked into college, and now you're walking into this new season, and it's still okay to admit that you don't know what's going on. And so, Absolutely. Be humble, seek community, seek guidance. This is really, it's just a really sweet time of life.
Yeah.
And so,
absolutely. And on that same breath, I don't know, like this is maybe a little different conversation, but your first point, I think, was you grow where you go. So like if you're taking these bad habits from college and you're like, you haven't changed them or like evaluated what you're doing, like, you know, a lot of college culture is like partying and drinking and all this stuff. Like obviously if you're in that culture and it continues like outside of college when you graduate, that is something to like look out for. You know, like if you sense these bad habits and they're starting to follow you outside of the college world, then maybe like evaluate that, because I think there are obviously two sides to that coin. And so like just look out, because basically what I'm trying to say is you don't want to grow that, right?
Yeah.
And so finding the community that can help you, finding the community that can like be honest with you and be like, hey bro, like you're going out a little too much, maybe let's chill out and tone it down a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's tempting to do that because you have no restrictions, but just keep in mind, like, yeah, people are on your side. And I don't know, I felt called to say that because I know friends that are like that and that have still done that and still do that to this day.
For sure. Post
college, 5, 6, 7 years after college. And it's just, you know, not probably the path you want to go down. So
for sure. Just remember that we're all, no pun intended, works in progress.
Ayo.
And so you're not where you're going to be. I'm not where I'm going to be.
I
and
might
so,
be.
No, so you're not. So you're not done. So yeah, keep striving. All right. Creators of the week. We'll have to set pretty quick so we don't go too long on the podcast. My creator this week is my guy, What Up RG. He's a rapper. Look him up. Dropped a couple of singles over the last week, 2 weeks. One of them was trending already, like on social media, so I'm sure you've heard it. But dropped a new song, Benediction. It's awesome. It's a bop. So I'll tag his Instagram in that. I think that means he has an album coming, which I'm excited for. So check him out. What Up RG? Who's yours? Creator of the week?
I don't have one, bro. So I'm gonna steal yours though.
Oh my god.
I mean, no, this one is. I was gonna say Brady Shearer. You said I told you not to say it, but
you can have him.
No, dude. I think
Brady's a good dude.
I don't have one this week, but I'll come up with 2 next week. How about that?
There you go. Go check out What Up RG. Listen to his music. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Until next time. Again, graduates, congratulations. Enjoy. Have some fun. Enjoy the hard work that you did.
Absolutely.
Just remember, you're not done. Still a work in progress. So
Ayo.
We'll see you guys next week when we talk about reading the Bible. Go for it.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.